All right. Welcome to Wrestling Unwrapped, episode number 5, as we travel back in time to July 16, 2006, Los Angeles, California, for Pro Wrestling Guerrilla's first ever Threemendous third anniversary. And here to review it for you are, of course, the hosts of Wrestling Unwrapped, Patrick Hetza and Harry Broadhurst. Take it away, guys.
I just want to say that I'm proud that you actually said Threemendous. Well done.
You did a tremendous job saying Threemendous.
Okay.
Speaking of Threemendous, technically on the DVD, I'm almost certain that this is referred to as just the third anniversary show. They don't get into the Threemendous thing until the second edition.
Which is weird, but I noticed that too. Real quick, hi everybody.
Oh, greetings. How y'all doing out there?
No, don't adjust your computer screens or your phones or whatever device you are using to listen to us. You are hearing this right. You are hearing this at 11 o'clock in the morning if you're in the Midwest, and high noon if you're on the East Coast.
Okay, 12:20.
What?
I said 12:20. Technically, you should be watching Price is Right about now there, Patrick.
Price is Right airs at 10 o'clock for me.
So it does air live.
I don't know. Anyway. Before we get too far gone already, welcome as always to Wrestling Unwrapped. Kind of a special edition, I guess you could say. I am Patrick Hetza, and joining me as always, Harry Broadhurst, and our producer, as always, Sean Garmer. And before we get too far in, as always, this episode is brought to you in partnership, I guess would be the best way to put it, with 411media.com. Shut up for a minute. It's brought to you in partnership with 411mania.com and lastwordonsports.com, along with the W2M Network, which you can find on Facebook at facebook.com/W2M Network. So maybe we lied a little bit on last week's show when we, agreed to cover I believe it was 25-match DVD set. And that ended up not working out. So, ta-da!
Well, one of us had some medical situations. I won't bore you all with the specifics, but I found myself inside of the hospital twice within the span of the last 7 days, and I'm in the process of getting everything all worked out. So, due to the fact that I had the medical situations that I did, that significantly limited my free time and therefore significantly limited my abilities to watch a 25-match DVD set. We will get to Falls Count Anywhere.
So what's your excuse for your severe limits on actually being a quality host?
You wish you were half the host I was and had half the brain that I do.
I am half the man that you are, and you have half the brain that I do. I think that's what Sid was trying to say.
Yes, but what he ended up saying is, you are half the man I am, and I have half the brain you do, which, in retrospect, is probably more accurate. Yeah. It could be worse, Patrick. We could be trying to do Steiner math.
It's actually been proven that works out. So, as Sean mentioned, we are going back July the 16th. Wait, did you say July 16th?
Isn't it June?
The Wikipedia that I am reading says July 16, 2006.
Should be right around my birthday.
I actually thought the show was in June, but if Wikipedia says it, it must be true.
Exactly. Anyway, and yes, we are going back to L.A. for we're going to call it Threemendous. The show's officially now being called Threemendous, but Yeah, which was something I was going to kind of mention is the fact that PWG referred to this one as the third anniversary show. So,
which was weird because both of their previous anniversary shows had wacky names. I think they called their second show the Bicentennial or something. The second anniversary show, the Bicentennial,
maybe. And now they. Third.
Almost certain that's what it was. And then obviously the first one had a wacky name as well, but they usually, like I know the fourth anniversary show, which would have been the following July, was the Giant Size Annual Volume 4. So they're known for doing these wacky names. So the fact that it came off as just the third anniversary show was a little bit weird, and then that kind of explains why they changed it. They kind of backlogged it and gone with Threemendous in hindsight.
Yeah, and obviously now they pretty much just call all of their anniversary shows like just the year of the anniversary. So this year will most likely be 13. The one for the 11th anniversary was 11. But they even to this day, considering this past summer was their 12th anniversary, they still keep to the Threemendous name as they had Threemendous 4. So nice to see continuity in wrestling because God knows that's a rare thing.
Yes, continuity from an independent promotion, no way.
Some do it. Or not.
All right. All right. So, are we about ready to get into some results here, or do you have anything else you want to say about the show before we get there?
Oh, we probably should mention that it's coming from the Sweatbox in L.A., not the American Legion Hall.
It's the Jewish Community Center.
They call it the Sweatbox. That's what it is. It's the Sweatbox. The AC never worked.
I'm just giving the actual name of the building. PWG fans affectionately know it as the Sweatbox. But I'm just giving the name of the building.
And as Harry just mentioned, before we actually get into the full rundown, we like to try and run down the results very quickly. So, Harry, are you good to go?
Hold on. Turning the page now. Okay, I'm good.
Of course. Here's Harry.
It was 2 pages back in my notebook. Cut me some slack.
No.
I'm in the process of watching another DVD because that's kind of what I do. And I just finished a CZW show. I'm not sure why I'm still watching CZW in 2016, but whatever.
Well, focus on PWG for now, Harry.
I have it.
All right, go ahead.
As Sean mentioned, it is July 16th, 2006. This is PWG's third anniversary show, although it has become known as Threemendous, Volume 1. And we are live from Los Angeles, California at the JCC. Here we go. Well, live to tape. For the title of Greatest DVD Commentator Ever, PWG DVD Commentator Ever, excuse me, you have to make the distinction here. Disco Machine defeats Excalibur via choke breaker at 8 minutes and 31 seconds. Ronan beats Nemesis with a Death Valley driver at 7 minutes and 7 seconds. And those are the only 2 matches under 10 minutes on the entire show, but that would be kind of a recurring theme for PWG shows. All right, anyways. Colt Cabana defeats Top Gun Talwar by submission to a reverse bear hug. Use your imagination, folks. I'm not going into the gory details. At 12 minutes and 6 seconds.
Oh, we're going to talk about that.
The dynasty of Chris Bosch, Scott Lost, and Scorpius Sky defeat Team PWG of Davey Richards, the Human Tornado, and Kevin Steen at 20 minutes and 11 seconds when Scorpio Sky pins Human Tornado with a high-angle implant DDT. Roderick Strong taps TJ Perkins with the Stronghold at 18:55. the Kings of Wrestling defeat Cape Fear because the Briscoes were too drunk to get on a plane, which would become a recurring theme for PWG for several months. As Claudio Castagnoli pins El Generico with the KRS-1, KRS meaning Kings Reign Supreme for those that do not know, at 20 minutes and 47 seconds. Now, I'm willing to bet that if you're listening to this show, you probably know what the KRS-1 stands for.
Yeah.
And Joey Ryan defeats B-Boy via knockout. They did the whole arm raising thingy, so that's technically a knockout. With a liquid-soaked rag, your two co-hosts are divided on what that particular liquid was. In the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't matter. Ryan retains the PWG heavyweight title at 34 minutes and 17 seconds.
Oh, we're going to have a lot to talk about in this main event.
Oh, and there's a bonus segment, too, that I'm sure we'll talk about.
Oh, yes, we will. Thank you, Harry.
You're welcome, Patrick.
And folks, just so you know, like, you have absolutely no idea how much disagreeing, not even Harry and I, but how much disagreeing Sean and I had last night when we were talking about the liquid.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's water, so it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
Patrick seemed to be I'm of the opinion that the liquid has usually been labeled as ether when it comes to pro wrestling. What did you say it was? Whatever. We'll get into this more when we get to that match.
Yeah, I'm sure, because that match is, well, we'll get into it when we get into it.
Tables, ladders, and chairs inside of a cage, and yet they still found a way to overbook it.
Because that in itself is an overbooking.
Yeah, well, welcome to life on the Independence in 2006, Patrick.
Yep. True, very, very true. But yeah, so a lot of stuff to get through, so we might as well get going right away. We should also mention, probably before we actually get started, before we kind of lose people talking about them more than just their patch, the commentators for this show are also Disco Machine and Excalibur. So they're fighting each other, but they're also commentating on the entire show in case we mention them, past their match, which I always found weird in old PWG, and it's what the two of them are doing now is going to make talking about their match, which we might as well get into right away, Excalibur versus Disco Machine, a little bit more awkward.
How so?
Well, I mean, do you want me to spoil the end right away?
What, the fact that Excalibur gets involved in the main event?
No, the fact that Disco Machine wins.
I already said the Disco Machine wins.
It is true. You actually did. But the fact that Disco Machine wins to become the greatest PWG commentator of all time, who's the one that's still commentating now?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah.
I actually think at the time both of them were part owners in the company, and that is no longer the case, as I believe Disco has sold his share. I think the way that it works right now is it's Excalibur, Super Dragon, and the Young Bucks are the four controlling sources of PWG right now.
I thought it was only three, and it's Joey Ryan instead of the Young Bucks.
No, I know the Young Bucks have a stake inside of PWG. It's one of the reasons they're still allowed to work PWG through their ROH exclusivity contract.
Interesting. I don't really have too much to say about this match. I didn't like this match. They didn't really flow that well together, and they were actually kind of pretty sloppy, I thought.
It wasn't terrible. It wasn't the best effort I've ever seen from either guy. I've actually become a fan of Excalibur over the years. It's only because he's charismatic enough that he can handle subpar working by the fact that he can get over on the sheer strength of charisma. He's kind of like the Santino Marella of Pro Wrestling Guerilla.
Yeah, I could kind of see where you're going with that. But like I said, even still, and I think actually there's somebody later on in the show that I would even equate more to being the Santino Marella of PWG. But we'll get to that.
Colt Cabana is not around enough to be Santino Marella.
I'm talking at this specific point. Got the right match though, but the wrong person. I'm talking at this certain point. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the match was what it was, and it was essentially just a way to have kind of a fun opener between the two of them. But besides that, I mean, there really wasn't much to the match itself.
Well, you'll notice the fact that they didn't take the match seriously by the fact that it was one of only two matches not to go 10-plus minutes on the show. And as anybody who's a longtime PWG viewer, such as ourselves, knows that usually a match under 10 minutes is a sign that it's a match that people aren't supposed to care about.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was booked at the last minute. It may have even been a time filler because of the lack of Briscoes, which, okay, even before we get to that match, we probably should also bring up the fact that the first thing that we actually see on the DVD is not Excalibur and not Disco Machine. It's actually Dino Winwood talking, celebrating the third anniversary and everything like that, and then mentioning that the Briscoes aren't there. And
that would become somewhat of a recurring theme for 2006 because I just watched the All-Star Weekend 3 shows, and the very start of All-Star Weekend 3 is Dino coming out and announcing that the Briscoes were too drunk to get on a plane. Here's my thought process. In that time frame, then why not just not book them?
Yeah, because it becomes more and more clear as we go through the rest of the year that the Briscoes ain't showing up. Quit booking them.
They do eventually show up. It just takes a while.
Yeah, I don't think they would show up until like 2012? 2013?
I actually do think they have a match in PWG in 2007.
Oh, okay. So, but I mean, Disco Machine wins, and it's, he somehow becomes the greatest PWG commentator of all time, despite the fact that he's now no longer there, and Excalibur is widely regarded as one of the best independent wrestling commentators ever today.
I will say this much, the one thing I want to touch on before we get out of this match. Do not care for the fact that they busted out a move as big as the chokebreaker for the finish of the opening contest.
Yeah, that's kind of a meh.
And I get that that's Disco's finish, and that's all well and good, but if you're going to have this match end on a chokebreaker, then flip-flop the two opening contests. Let Ronan and Nemesis kick off the show, rather than Excalibur and Disco.
Yeah.
Because I'm okay with a Death Valley Driver finishing the first match. The chokebreaker should not be finishing the first match on a show.
Yeah, it's kind of too big of it's too big of a move for an opening match.
And the only thought I really have to that is, who's the man? In prison.
Of course.
Again.
Anyway.
So, to Gary's point, or not Gary's, sorry, Harry's point,
no,
again, I'm talking to him right now, so it's kind of like, whatever, sorry. On the May 20th, 2007, the Briscoes showed up to appear in the Dynamite Do Remember Tag Team Title Tournament, and they got to the finals where they lost to Roderick Strong and
Do,
the man who would be
do
known as
yourself
Neville.
do yourself a favor, Sean. Just call it DDT4.
Yeah.
Fine. You're right.
It's easier that way.
It's Dynamite Duumvirate Tag Team Title Tournament, but it's pretty much shorthanded by almost everybody to DDT4.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I don't even think PWG themselves call it the full name anymore. It's just DDT4.
Probably because they don't want to mess it up on air and then sound stupid. Like I just did. So.
Well, you know what it is? It's the fact that they have that, it's that damn French word in the middle. It's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Thank you, Mr. Producer.
Thank you. So, opening match was what it was, so I'm done with it.
Well, I'm glad that you're moving on to the second match because I really have nothing to say about this second match. Ronan and Nemesis, and I'm going to segue right into it, is the very definition of an indie nobody match. I've never cared for Ronan. Nemesis has been tolerable teaming with Disco Machine in previous PWG outings, but I do not care for him as a singles. And this match was a whole lot of nothing outside of some surprising agility from Nemesis.
See, I didn't mind this match that much, but I think part of it was the fact that I disliked the first match. That, to me, I thought this was a better match than the first match.
Completely disagree with you. I thought Disco and Excalibur was way better. Even if Disco and Excalibur was a little bit sloppier, Disco and Excalibur also had a whole lot more interaction with the fans. You could tell the fans were definitely more interested in Disco and Excalibur than they were in Ronan and Nemesis.
That may be part of it as well, because the crowd was definitely more into the first first bout than this one. But I still didn't really mind this match that much. But I mean, 2 for 2 on kind of meh openers for me anyway. And
yeah, well, the show picks up quite nicely from there.
Huh?
2 for 2 in regards to the opening contest here of being not much that anybody will care about, but the show picks up quite nicely from there.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not much that we could say about this one. It is what it was. It was what it was. So,
pretty sure it is what it is.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it is what it is a show from 2008 and not the one we're reviewing.
Exactly. So, I think we can very quickly move on from this one. And how the hell do we talk about this next one? Colt Cabana versus Palwar.
Well, pretty much the way you talk about this next match is you say 2 simple words, and those 2 words are Colt Cabana.
This match screams Colt Cabana.
You know what the thing was? Is it was the kind of match that you were expecting from Cabana around this time. When promoters booked Cabana around this time, they knew that he wasn't going to do a whole lot in the way of actual wrestling, because this was right around the time he was starting to get serious in Ring of Honor, leading up to what would eventually become the maturation of Colt Cabana in the blood feud that he had in ROH with Homicide. However, this was still that fun-loving, goofy Cabana that you would see everywhere else. And specifically, this was a bunch of grown men doing ridiculous handshake spots.
Yeah. We could say that the fight went all over the place, but did it really?
Calling this a fight is being awfully generous, Patrick.
I said, when I was watching this, I have to admit, I told Harry that just for one spot, I gave this match 3 stars right off the bat. Just for one spot. And the reason I was hesitating to say that this fight, match, whatever you want to call it, this segment, was going all over was because at one point, Cabana and Talwar are fighting through the crowd and make their way towards the entranceway and go beyond the entranceway to the point that even the ring announcer and I can't remember who else, but their security. It had to be security because it wasn't the referee. Are watching Cabana and Talwar fight beyond the curtain, and you can hear the grunting and everything, only for security and the ring announcer to pull back the curtain to find Cabana having tea and Talwar snorting cocaine off of a saucer. I hate wrestling sometimes.
I will admit, for as ridiculous as it was, it got a solid chuckle out of me.
Got more than a chuckle out of me because I'm a fan of more lighthearted stuff and don't take everything so seriously, Terry.
Oh, no, I can laugh during the course of a show. I have no problem laughing during the course of a show. I've never really found Top Gun Talwar funny.
How dare you?
Comedy is... We've had this conversation before on the reaction. Comedy is subjective, incredibly subjective at times. And some people will really enjoy a certain segment and other people won't. I will say that the Tea Party spot was huge. It was clever. It was a very ingenious way for them to catch a break in mid-match and be able to catch their breath. That being said, overall, in the grand scheme of things, this match doesn't mean a whole lot.
I mean, no, this is an entire... This whole match is comedy shtick. But, considering what we're going to get with the rest of the matches from here on out, I still don't mind a 10-minute comedy shtick match. It's meant to be kind of a breakup of everything. And in this case, this I don't want to say that this was the match, but the crowd seemed more into this match than the first two, and it kind of, without actually doing it by being a great match, but it kind of kicked the show into a higher gear with everyone having fun and getting more into it. It seemed like this was the launching point for this show because the first two matches didn't really do a whole hell of a lot.
I don't disagree with you there, but at the same time, what I'm saying is I think this match would have been better formatted a little bit later on in the show. And the reason I say that is because after you have this little comedy match right here, and let's be honest, it is a comedy match, and I have no issue with comedy matches. I can enjoy a good comedy match here and there. The rest of the show, you have a super intense feud in regards to the Dynasty versus Team PWG. You have the insane tag title match as well as the blood feud main event. The only other match that's really not super intense to start off with is Roderick Strong and TJ Perkins. But the thing is, with Roderick Strong in that match, he's going to hit TJ hard, so it's going to be a physical match. I think this match would have been better off. I think this match would have been better off slotted between Roderick and TJ and Cape Fear versus the King, so that way you could have a bit of a break from the back-to-back-to-back-to-back aggressiveness.
Yeah, that is true, but I mean, if anything, you could almost, I think to me, you could almost flip this match and the match that followed it, even over Roderick and TJ, and the next match being the six-man tag.
You know what I would do? I would switch this match with the Roderick and TJ match. Go Roderick, TJ, followed by that six-man tag, and then have this match as a cool-down from that six-man tag.
But once again, I mean, we're just rebooking the show.
Hindsight's 20/20.
Of course, always is. But I mean, even still, I have no issues with this match. I really don't, because I like Cabana, and I've seen Cabana evolve the way that he has, to become quite a very good wrestler now. To see where he was at this point now 10 years ago to the evolution of what he's become now is really, a kind of a remarkable thing. And because he's essentially Dusty Rhodes here, just with a bit more shtick, and a bit more, a bit more of the even more of the show part of it, with going behind the curtain and certain other spots. But essentially, he's kind of the independent Dusty Rhodes here.
Dusty was a more serious worker than Cabana was at this point.
I said with a bit more shtick.
Well, I don't disagree, but at the same time, I think you could take that a step further and say that Cabana is kind of being you could almost say the Eugene of independent wrestling at this point, just without the slow person gimmick.
Okay, I could see what you mean.
He was the guy that you brought out there. He was the guy that you brought out during the course of your show for levity. You weren't expecting a great match, but he could perform, because I'm of the opinion that Nick Dinsmore was an incredible worker. His gimmick just severely limited him. I'm of the opinion that Colt Cabana is a really good worker. At this point, his gimmick severely limited him.
Yeah, I think that probably would be the number one complaint, would be the severe limitation that he's being forced with in his gimmick here. But, Cabana ends up picking up a win in the end, which I think kind of still worked out for the better, because, looking back now, you could see where Cabana, while still being mostly a comic stick wrestler, he was still on the way out.
Would you like to describe the finish? Because I refuse to.
Oh, come on, Harry.
I called it a reverse bear hug, and I moved on.
I hate wrestling.
Wrestling's not homoerotic at all. Why do you ask?
When Harry says reverse bear hug, it's not reverse like Cabana had Talwar in a bear hug, but in the style of like a German suplex.
No, although technically speaking, that would have still probably been less sexual than the way the finish ended up coming off. Okay, coming off is a bad choice of words there.
And you're the one that didn't want to talk about it. Shame.
Okay, I'm fine. You really want me to describe this the way that I would have?
Jesus Christ. Cabana had Talwar up for a 69 bear hug, okay?
Yes, a standing 69 bear hug.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. Talwar was upside down, and Cabana was just swinging him around in a bear hug style. It was a 69 bear hug.
Coming soon to Vivid Home Video.
Starring Sunny in China. Me and my big
Sean, can I get a new co-host?
Let's just leave that there.
Okay. Sean, can I get a new co-host?
I thought this was kind of Patrick's show. He'd have to make the decision, right?
Wait, whoa. Negatory, sir.
No? Okay. Well, that's probably something we should talk about.
The original idea to do a DVD review show was actually mine.
Oh boy, here we go. Well, I apologize, sir.
That's fine. Let's get back to the show.
Thank God.
We got to do and a limited time to get it accomplished.
Exactly. So, moving on and moving away far away from
that finish. Yes, absolutely.
Next match is a six-man tag. I could say the most people involved is a single match tonight, but I'd be lying. Chris Bosch, Scott Lost.
The most people officially involved in a match.
Well, yeah, okay, fair enough. It's Scott Lost, Chris Bosch, and Scorpio Sky, accompanied to the ring by Jade Chung, a.k.a. The Dynasty.
Jade Chung.
Quiet.
Nope.
Facing off against, as you call them, Team PWG in Kevin Steen, Davey Richards, and the Human Tornado are coming to the ring by Candice LeRae. I don't know that she was ever named at this point, though.
She was. Towards the tail, at the end of the show, when she jumped into the ring and attacked Jade during the cluster, that was the main event. During the course of this particular match, she was not named. And I do believe this may have been one of her first appearances.
This was definitely before PWG started pushing the envelope with Human Tornado and Candice, to say the least. But I think that's a story for another day.
Yes, that is a story for when we review the Hero Tornado Guerrilla Warfare match.
Yeah. And that's a whole thing in and of itself. I'm trying to remember.
To be fair, he was a pimp.
Let's leave it at that.
I'm just going to say that the Godfather wasn't wrong. Pimping ain't easy.
I'm aware, but there's still the things with that will leave a lot of people uncomfortable if and when we ever do talk about that match.
Oh, no, I completely agree with you, but at the same time it's also one of the better examples of storytelling in PWG's history, so.
Fair enough. But
all right, back
to
that,
and yeah, getting back to this match. Little known fact about me. I don't like Davey Richards. Never have. I actually really don't.
You don't like who?
Davey Richards.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan myself either. Less of a fan. Sean and I have had this conversation before, too. I'm even less of a fan of his protege, Kyle O'Reilly.
I'm the polar opposite. I love Kyle O'Reilly.
I like Bobby Fish. I've never cared for Kyle O'Reilly, but that's neither here nor there for this particular
I don't
show.
care for either of the Wolves, so that's just me.
See, I dig Eddie Edwards, actually. I enjoy Eddie Edwards. I think his solo stuff is a lot better than his tag stuff because I think a lot of that is Davey drags Eddie into his style of match.
Fair enough.
So, but and the reason I bring up the fact that I don't like Davey Richards is he takes a lot of the offense in this match, and I mean, for me, I still find the Dynasty weird because I never know if they're supposed to be taken serious or not. Because
under general principle, the answer to that question is no. However, once they get into the ring, usually they are to be taken relatively seriously. You never take Chris Bosch seriously, period.
Well,
Any dude who punches somebody square in the balls and calls it lion cock, well, you kind of have to take what you're getting there.
I think Sean's squirming right now.
No, I'm trying to keep myself from busting out laughing is what I'm trying to do.
Did you not know that, Sean?
No. What? So what is the? So what does that even mean, anyways? Like people who don't know.
No, Patrick. There is no way to verbally describe it that will justify the awesomeness that is Chris Bosch's lion cock. It has to be visually seen to be appreciated. Therefore, we're going to have to find a video and post it on the Wrestling Unwrapped Facebook page. Where can people find that, by the way, Patrick?
They can find that on, crap, I can never remember this part.
Facebook.com/Wrestling Unwrapped.
You jerk. I was going to say MySpace.
Don't nobody with any kind of intelligence use MySpace still?
Yeah, but we're talking about a show from '06. People still used it then.
Yeah, I actually didn't make the switch to Facebook until 2007, so that would be accurate.
Huh. Anyway.
Okay, but here's the thing. If people go on MySpace looking for Wrestling Unwrapped, who knows what they're going to find?
Music, and a lot of it. But yeah, as Harry mentioned, Facebook.com/Wrestling Unwrapped, or find us on Twitter at WU Off the Shelf. Yeah, I think we have to find a video to post to the Facebook page.
Oh, I'm loading my computer and going to YouTube right now.
Sure you are. I mean, this was probably, to this point, this was probably the most serious match that we had so far.
Well, with good reason.
Well, yeah.
I mean, you just had just a couple of months ago, I think it might have been either the month before or 2 months before this particular show, you had the formation of the dominant heel stable in Pro Wrestling Guerilla of the Dynasty, which was the former tag team champions, Arrogance, that would be Chris Bosch and Scott Moss. The now unmasked and outraged Scorpio Sky, who had just recently lost his mask, probably at the beginning of the end of 2005, I think. And the PWG World Heavyweight Champion, Joey Ryan.
Yeah. Which this would all fit into the cluster that would become the main event.
We're getting there.
Yeah. Folks, trust me when I say this. Everything we're talking about and how this match, how the main event is a complete cluster, just wait. You have no idea how right we are.
I wish I would have been able to play a Jake Roberts.
I was just about to say that, Sean. Because as soon as he said that, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, trust me. Jake the Snake style, absolutely.
Except I'm not a snake. You can trust me.
I made that mistake once, and here we are almost 2 years later doing the podcast still. I don't know about that.
Fault.
Anyway.
It's your fault. Anyway. Excuse me. As far as this match goes, I mean, the first 3/4 of it was kind of goofy and was, to me, almost an outright brawl. And then the let's beat the hell out of Davey Richards show. You know,
real quick, before we get into the actual finish to this match and the insane spot fest that it broke into at the tail end there, what did you think of Scorpio Sky and Davey Richards' brawl in the chairs?
Why am I drawing a blank? I know I'm missing something.
No, it's during the course of one of the heat segments on Tornado, and Richards comes over and gets into the face of the Dynasty corner, and Scorpio Sky tackles him, and they have an actual, what looks like a legit shoot brawl into the chairs. And I know that it was completely worked because they ended up working together towards the end of the match anyways. But it looked legit, and it honestly gave that match a little bit of added intensity that I think it desperately needed at that point.
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking about. I mean, yeah, because at that point, I mean, this match goes a long time. You know, let's not shy away from that, because this was one of the longer matches on the show, and
20 minutes and 11 seconds.
Yeah, and about halfway, or probably probably about halfway through, it kind of does seem to hit a wall. And, the brawl may have just been their idea to try and, get it going and get right in the fans' faces. And maybe they could have just been stiff with each other just to make it look good in front of the fans because they were so close to them.
They were close to losing the fans there because of the fact that what was supposed to be a heated exchange. And if you recall, when this match originally started at the top of it, after the promo that was cut by the Dynasty there, then it broke down into a massive six-person pure six brawl, as Gordon Sully would say. So they started off really intense, and then, as you mentioned, they kind of hit a lull towards the middle there. But then once it happened again, it picked up significantly.
Yeah, so it may have just been a kickstart that the match so very desperately needed in the end, because the ending ended up being pretty hot and heavy, and lost the chest off for a second. The end, everything kind of really started going from there, and even we talked about the Cabana and Talwar match kind of kicking everything into a higher gear, but this may have been the entire turning point of the show, because from here on out, the way this match goes from about the second half on, with everything being so hot and heavy through the end, it's almost non-stop for the entire rest of the show. So, it's I don't know, maybe it may have just been a kickstart.
But the thing is I think you run the risk of burning out a crowd if you end up doing that nothing but craziness between a certain point and then all the way up until the end of the. Hold on one second, I have the YouTube video pulled up and I gotta post it to the page. As I was saying before, I got so really distracted by the video. I think you run the risk of burning out a crowd by doing the back-to-back craziness there. That being said, once you get to the meat and potatoes of this match here, specifically into that crazy cluster of a finish there, and I mean cluster in a good way here because it's just balls to the wall action. We can say balls still, right, Sean? Anyways.
But at the same time, for me, you still have a break coming up for me. Because
there's no real intensity until you get into the striking portion of Roderick Strong and TJP.
Okay, yeah, you got me, because of the fact that usually the first half to three-quarters of a Roderick Strong match to me is just a break.
And a lot of times, more times than not, the arm and the back work that Roderick does goes nowhere. They actually tied it into the finish for the next match, but we'll get into that match here shortly. Sean, prepare to be tagged on a post on Facebook.
I think he's on mute. And as we mentioned already, the Dynasty ended up winning, and trying to remember if I have the timeline correct, but I think after this match, Steen, basically all three members of Team PWG call out the Dynasty for Bola, which was going to happen in the next month or two, I believe.
September or October of 2006, I do believe. I can check. Hold on, I'll check my dates. Because I know I own the 2006 Bola. So, for those of you that don't know, if you're listening to this review, Bola stands for the Battle of Los Angeles. It is the preeminent PWG tournament throughout the course of the year,
and probably the biggest independent wrestling tournament of the year period.
At that point, it was not.
Now it is.
Yes, now it is, because of the fact that the reputation of the TPI has kind of waned due to the fact that IWA Mid-South can't decide if it's running or not most of the time. At that particular point in time, I would argue that the Ted Petty Invitational was more important than Bola was.
Yeah, in '06, yes. And I believe, I believe the '06 TPI is that the one that's regarded as the greatest?
A lot of people consider 2004 to be the greatest TPI.
Okay, that's the one. I think that's the one I'm thinking of.
2006 was the one that low-key won. 2004 was the one that was won by AJ Styles.
Okay, yeah, I think it's '04 then that I'm thinking of.
That being said, 2006 has some barn burner matches, including a phenomenal Claudio Castagnoli Mike Quackenbush match.
Obviously, this is one that we'll have to try and cover in the future.
I already own it.
I don't.
Well, you don't have a whole lot in the way of IWM itself, so.
Nor will I.
You're an AAW guy. We get it.
Oh, no. That AAW has nothing to do with that.
Well, anyways, back to the particular show that we're discussing here in this particular match, the six-man tag here. The one thing that I do want to mention here is the very tail end. Kevin Steen apologizes to Human Tornado for saying some not so nice things about him, and they hug it out quite nicely.
Is it the original Hug It Out?
If it's not, it's up there.
Because, yes, we had to get a Daniel Bryan mention in somehow.
The Battle of Los Angeles in 2006 was September 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 2006.
Oh, okay. So,
and I apparently don't own the August show in between the two of them. Some bitch.
Anyway, anywho, though. But the Dynasty ended up winning, I believe, via chicanery. So,
not really chicanery. The Dynasty win when Scorpio Sky pins Human Tornado with that high angle implant DDT after the match breaks down.
But the match breaks down.
Well, it's a six-man tag. It happens.
True, very true.
The thing about it was, though, and the one thing that I do want to point out here is when I say high angle implant DDT, I mean high angle implant DDT here. We're talking almost a brain buster implant DDT.
I put it as, for those that watch modern PWG, Human Tornado takes this DDT like Ricochet currently takes Hurricanranas. Nothing?
Harry's phone messed up.
Oh, great.
Hey, he's back on now, though.
Are we off air, or did I just get hung up on?
That was you.
The Skype messed up on you, I guess.
Oh, so we're still on air?
Yes.
Okay.
Keep going.
What were you saying, Patrick?
I was saying for those that watch like modern PWG, the way I put it is Human Tornado takes this DDT like Ricochet takes Hurricanranas, like almost just straight on his head.
More or less.
Yeah.
For those of you that are familiar with Shinya Hashimoto, that vertical drop brain buster that he does, where he lifts you up and then brings you straight down like DDT style with the brain buster, that's almost kind of how Tornado landed on this particular implant DDT.
Oof.
That's one way to, yeah. That's almost exactly how it is. So
I'm not making this up, and that oof is correct, Sean, because it looks nasty, and it is a
I'm just thinking of those Shinya Hashimoto drops. They're nasty, so I can only imagine.
Oh, we're talking full-on domage here, Sean.
Yikes.
All
Yeah,
right,
so go find that if you want to see somebody get dropped in their dome.
So,
all right, we kind of briefly mentioned it, Patrick. What do you say we get into Roderick Strong and TJP here?
Can we just get into the second half of the match?
Well, that is traditionally the way it goes in regards to a Roderick Strong match, and we were just talking about this a few seconds ago before Sean decided to hang up on me. And that was specifically being the fact that, generally speaking, the first anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes of a Roderick Strong match don't matter in the grand scheme of things.
It's like an Iron Man match. The first half doesn't matter. It's all about the second half.
The first half of the Roderick Strong match is like, whose line is it anyway? It's where the points are made up and they really don't matter.
Yeah. The moves are made up, and in the grand scheme of things, it just doesn't matter.
All right. So let's actually talk about the finish itself here, and the fact that Roderick Strong laid something of a beating on young TJ here.
Which is why the second half of the match for me is great. The first half isn't bad. I just find it honestly boring. The second half to me isn't bad until the actual ending, which for me is overkill. Because the ending 3 moves in this case
Sorry.
Okay, Skype has apparently now decided to hang up on Patrick as well, so now
I
he's
have
back.
2 calls going now.
Hold on.
Skype doesn't like us today.
Let me make sure that you guys are... Okay, so you guys are both there?
This is what happens. This is what happens when we try to run at 12:20 on a freaking Tuesday.
Well, we're almost at the hour mark, so... However fast you guys want to get this done, this is on you guys. Just letting you know.
I'm good. Carry on, Patrick.
All right. What was the last thing I heard?
You were starting to break down the finish of the contest. We didn't actually get to it.
Oh, okay. So, because I found the very ending of the match to be overkill, which was, I believe, in order, a stick kick, a kick out, a sit-out powerbomb, a kick out, and a stronghold?
I don't think there was a cover after the Gibson driver. And you're mentioning the sit-out powerbomb. It was actually a Tiger driver, and that's done in tribute to Jamie Noble.
Oh, okay. My mistake there.
And hence why I call it the Gibson driver.
Yeah. But, like you said, Roger beats the hell out of TJP in this one. With every chop, Roger just, it was like, it almost made me wonder, was somebody pissed off at Perkins at this point because Roger beats the piss out of him?
It almost makes you think that TJP did something backstage that management was like, okay, you deal with Roderick this show. And if that doesn't change your attitude, you're fired.
I mean, because that's almost the only way I could think of what Perkins could have possibly have done to get the whooping he got from Roderick in this case, because incredibly stiff on the chops. Most of his kicks look either pretty snug or connected. I think he actually did catch him in the jaw with the sick kick at the end.
That's sick kick.
Well, fair enough. That is the sick kick in and of itself. But
I would say this much: as far as leaping Yakuza kicks go, I would argue that Strong's sick kick variation might be the best in independent professional wrestling.
I would be inclined to agree. I think the sick kick is actually a very, very good variation of the Yakuza kick.
The only one that I would have put up there with it around this time would have been Generico's Haluva kick, even though it wasn't known as the Haluva kick back then. I used to call it the Mexican Mafia kick around this time frame.
I think by this point I was calling it the Yakuza kick.
Legitimate Japanese businessman.
Of course. So
Sean, check the Facebook page. That's all I'm going to say.
So, I mean, and yes, Perkins does get some offense in, and it does, like I said, it does end up being a pretty good match, but it seemed like whenever Perkins was on offense, he was just, going about, his offense, but whenever he was on defense, it seemed like Roddy was incredibly stiff. And part of that is probably just Roddy being Roddy, because I've never known Roddy to not be a stiff guy in the ring. But there's an
inherent snugness about his work regardless of where he is, but he definitely seemed to be especially pissy against TJP here.
Yeah, and I think that's our point here. It's not the fact of, Roddy's a snug guy. Roddy's always a snug guy, but it just seemed like there was something extra here.
Well, you know what it might have been, too? This would have been around the time that TJP was training at the New Japan Dojo out in Los Angeles, too, right?
I believe so.
So then it might have been at TJP's encouragement for Roderick to work a stiffer style because TJ was used to encountering it at the Inoki Dojo.
And you're right. He very well could have been, because it's not like Perkins at this point would have been a young, hotshot new guy, kind of a year and a half, 2 years in. I think he was about 5 years in at this point.
What is the line that they've used? The youngest old-timer in the business, I believe, was the line that Excalibur always uses to describe him.
Yeah. It's something along those lines. Because, I mean, a lot of people don't realize TJP has actually been wrestling for quite a long time. So, it's not, there's 100 different things that, could have happened with this. Like Harry just said, it very well could have been TJP's own encouragement. It could have been Vanek's own encouragement, to be for Roderick to be a little bit more stiff with the match. But I mean, it does end up being a great match, in the end. And it's weird seeing Perkins wearing regular tights. Because
wasn't he wearing the tights that said Pinoboy, which was a tribute to back when he started in professional wrestling?
I don't know.
Almost certain he was wearing the Pinoy Boy tights. But then again, I watched another PWG show right beforehand, so I might be getting the two shows confused.
Yeah, because I don't remember hearing Excalibur mention anything about that, but he could have been. I don't know. So, but yeah, this match hurt to watch.
And imagine it probably hurt TJP even more.
I'm sure. So, but Roddy ends up getting the win via overkill. So, moving on. Our next match, our sub-main event, if you will, is Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli, Cesaro, to some of you. The Kings of Wrestling teaming up against Quicksilver and El Generico, better known as Cape Fear. And I'm trying to remember, were the Briscoes supposed to be involved in this somewhere?
It was supposed to be the Kings against the Briscoes, because Disco and Excalibur were actually supposed to team up against Cape Fear at this particular show.
Which would have been even more chaotic.
Well,
Yeah. There's really only one story about this match that I have. Because it's kind of, if you watch this match, it's kind of the elephant in the room with this match. What the hell happened to Claudio?
The fact that Claudio was wearing Hero's pants?
No, because they were doing that.
The blood from Claudio. I can explain that, actually.
Considering the fact that, hang on, because it wasn't just blood, it was, holy crap. Like, it got to the point that commentary had, like, no choice but to keep going back to this because of the fact that he was bleeding so much. Because this was insane. Claudio just gets busted open on what looks like the side of his head, and it just does not stop for the whole match.
I can actually explain that for you if you would like me to.
Sure.
And for those of you that watch the show that have the same question that Patrick does, the explanation is because the previous night in Ring of Honor would have been Cage's death. Team ROH versus Team CZW. At Death Before Dishonor 2006. Claudio, of course, represented Team CZW in that match.
After turning on them, or after turning on ROH.
After turning on ROH at the 100th show, which would have been back in March of 2006. I have almost this entire timeline of ROH shows. So this particular show had Cage of Death, which had the ending, the culmination, you could say, of the ROH CZW feud, and therefore Claudio got busted open on the side of his head by, I believe, an errant trash can shot at the Cage of Death match, and he got reopened up during the course of this particular Kings versus Cape Fear match.
Yeah. Because he was bleeding pretty bad for most of this match, and it's a long match, especially for kind of a tag team match, especially one booked on the fly like this, because...
To be fair, it's a Chris Hero match. Those always go long.
Yeah, fair enough.
Just saying.
For a match kind of being booked on the fly, it was still a great match, but how the hell do you have a bad match with Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli, and El Generico? I can't say much about Quicksilver. I don't know very much about him. I will admit that. I think all I know about him are the very few old school PWG shows that I've seen with him on them, which is not many.
Well,
I won't comment positively or negatively about him just because I don't know him that well.
I have quite a bit of Quicksilver, and I actually think he was an underrated hand. I don't believe he's still involved in wrestling once he was done. Mainstream wrestling fans, people that watch wrestling on television, would know him from Wrestling Society X as well.
Who the hell watched that?
He never broke out, despite being an incredible worker for a guy of his proportions. Let's be honest here. He's not the biggest dog in the fight. He actually makes El Generico look muscular side by side, which tells you something about his physique. But at the same time, Quicksilver could go.
Yeah, and even, in this match, I'm trying to think if there really were even any missteps in this match, and nothing is popping out majorly in my mind.
No, all four of these guys are super fluid throughout the entirety of this contest. And for being thrown together last minute as it was, because as Patrick and I mentioned, the Briscoes missing this show caused the Kings of Wrestling versus Briscoes match to be moved, and this match was rescheduled in its place of the Kings versus Cape Fear. For as thrown together as this was, everything was on point.
Which obviously would say something to you about, the quality in the ring of the four guys that you have in the tag team match. And despite
Just real quick here, Patrick, that in and of itself should be enough of an endorsement for Quicksilver that he was able to go step for step with Chris Hero, with Claudio Castagnoli, and with El Generico without screwing up.
Yeah. You know, it is kind of unfortunate that it was never really given a major shot aside from NCB. You know, which that wasn't a major thing, let's be honest here. But
no, obviously Wrestling Society X could have been a lot more than it was with if it had any kind of backing with MTV, but at the same time, there were a lot of people who didn't care for Wrestling Society X just due to the sheer nature of the show. And do you own the Wrestling Society X DVD?
That's funny.
Because I'm almost thinking that we're not going to do a show-by-show breakdown of Wrestling Society X because that would just be insanity. But I think there would be some fun talking about the run that was WSX.
Oh, no.
Not like I'm asking you to review an XPW show.
Huh?
It's not like I'm asking you to review an XPW show.
I would rather we review December to Dismember.
Again?
Yes. Anyway, I, you know, and despite the fact that you had two kind of, you know, well-known teams, I do think the right team still won. My guess, I'm wondering if KOW was supposed to end up beating the Briscoes anyway, so they just stuck with that.
Well, given what would become shortly for Chris Hero, because I'm almost certain that this would lead to Hero starting his ascension towards the top of Pro Wrestling Guerrilla once Claudio was leaving at the end of 2006. Because let's not forget, Castagnoli was originally signed at the end of 2006 and was supposed to start in the WWE back in 2007, but failed a wellness test. I believe he parked for something on the physical, and they revoked the contract, which led to Claudio going back to the independents for a while before he finally did get signed in like 2010. So Hero would eventually be set up to a point of relevance in the singles scene in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, and is a former multiple-time PWG World Heavyweight Champion now.
Yeah, so this, you could definitely tell this was the start of things to come. And, you know, I think, you know, this being 06, that as good as they were separately and in singles as well, you know, their run as the Kings of Wrestling through not only PWG but also, you know, in ROH and CZW and other places like that, very well known.
Chikara?
Chikara as well. You know,
they're announced as the Campeonatos de Parejas at the show.
That's right. I forgot about that.
The difference is they're heels in Chikara, though, with the Kings of Wrestling stable, and in PWG, the Kings of Wrestling were considered baby faces. Though you could argue that this was a face-face team because obviously Cape Fear is going to be cheered in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. It's a couple of masked guys who the fans just love, one of them being Generico, who is... I'm pretty sure it's illegally a crime to dislike El Generico.
Wait, what was that?
I miss him. I hope he's doing well with the Orphans.
No, I was trying to figure out what you said originally because you kind of broke up there.
Oh, I said I'm pretty sure it's legally a crime to hate El Generico.
Oh,
I miss him. I hope he's doing well with the Orphans.
So do I. Although I hope the stories of you know that I've heard supposedly of the Mexican Mafia and him and Kevin Steen. You know, I hope that was true. I hope
that was just Kevin Steen making up stories. You know how Kevin Steen is.
That is true. He acted like he respects people occasionally, and we all know that's not true. Anyway, But, Kings ended up winning via KRS-One, Kings Reign Supreme. Still one of the first wrestling shirts I ever owned.
Okay, so to put this into perspective for those of you that don't know, the KRS-One, it is an elevated double-team Michinoku driver. And what I mean by that is you have, I believe it was Generico they pinned. You have Generico set up with his feet across Cesaro's shoulders and Hero's hands on Generico's shoulders.
Think here, I'll put it this way. Think Generico planking. Jesus. Hero pushes Generico up into the air and flips him out into a version of the Michinoku driver from Claudio Castagnoli. That is the KRS-One, and that is why Kings reign supreme. I also missed the Queen of Wrestling, but that's a story for a different day.
I thought you guys were having to make the distinction because of the rapper named KRS-One, but
No one cares about rap, Sean.
Exactly. We prefer listening to music.
Oh, wow. Okay. I was going to say, the only rap I care about is the fact that rap is crap. Long live the West Texas Rednecks.
I was going to say that too, Harry. So there, you stole one from me.
Yeah, well, you stepped on my Jake Roberts line, so we're even today.
Good Lord.
Patrick?
What?
It's main event time.
This is so stupid.
This table for two.
Table for two? Only two?
Well, that's the host. The actual participants involved in there are somewhere around 11 or 12. And no, I am not making that number up.
Yeah, it's somewhere around there. So the main event I don't think it was World yet. I believe it was still the PWG Championship at this point.
It is the World Championship, actually. They would have just gone to Europe earlier in the year.
Okay, so for the PWG World Championship, it is Joey Ryan defending the championship. Joey Ryan defending the championship against B-Boy in a table, ladders, and chairs cage match. Yes, you heard that correct. By the way, despite being a cage match, it must end via pinfall submission or knockout.
Knockout, you say? Interesting stipulation for a cage match.
Well, I added that one in there. It's no disqualification, no count out, but leaving the cage does not matter, as they would prove multiple times over.
It's all Rick Knox's fault.
Whose?
The fact that they left the cage multiple times. It's all Rick Knox's fault.
Everything's Rick Knox's fault.
Well, I don't disagree with that. Carry on. Yeah.
So, we talked about, a blood feud and everything, kind of, not wanting it to start with a collar and elbow, and I'm trying to remember. I think that's what we were talking about, C.W. Anderson versus Tommy Dreamer last week, and you not liking, feuds and hardcore feuds and things like that, starting with a collar and elbow. Boy, you really didn't get that here, did you?
There were definitely no collar and elbows in this matchup.
This was a straight brawl. And, there's the fact that this has to go over half an hour. I believe it's, north of 34 minutes. So it's an incredibly long match. But then you also run into what I talked about last week in the fact that I don't like straight weapons matches. And this was essentially a straight weapons match almost.
Well, I'm going to give them a pass here, and the reason I'm going to give them a pass for straight weapons match here is because it's the main event of the biggest show of the year. Fans are expecting balls to the wall craziness here, and in order to deliver that, they've kind of figured the stipulation was necessary.
Okay, but putting a gimmick on top of a gimmick?
Well, that's just overbooking, but that's kind of PWG's thing around this time.
It's like, at this point, it seems like this was guerrilla warfare, just with a different name.
More or less, although not directly, because guerrilla warfare was false count anywhere, and this particular match had to end inside of the cage. I don't know that. Has there been a guerrilla warfare match up to this point? Yes, there had. Super Dragon and Steen would have been guerrilla warfare, wouldn't it have?
I believe so.
Yeah,
and
so
we all know what happened with that one.
The tax. So many tax.
Yeah. I mean, we might as well just get to it already. You know, because we kept talking about what a complete cluster, what this would turn into. And that's because half of the damn roster interferes in this match. Because
one thing we forgot to point out, the fact that Joey Ryan attacked Excalibur after the opening contest.
Oh yeah, we did forget to mention that part.
And it ties in here.
Yeah. So, which would explain part of it, because trying to remember the order here, and I believe it went. I believe Scorpio Sky was the first one to interfere on his own.
No,
and he obviously no.
Scott lost.
Right. Sorry. Okay. So Scott. Boy, I really thought it was Scorpio Sky. Scott Lost interferes on behalf of Joey Ryan, and the problem is that because there's so many interferences, in the end, the rest of the Dynasty plus Team PWG from the six-man tag earlier all interfere, plus Excalibur, plus Jake Chung and Candice LeRae all get involved here. So you got 3, 6, 9. Yeah,
2 referees, 11.
Two referees, so that's 11 people all getting involved here and turning this into just a complete mess. Which, as brutal as this match had already been, I didn't like this. I really didn't. And while, yes, it completely made sense, with trying to get the Dynasty over, and getting everyone over as super heel because of the fact that I believe it was Joey Ryan himself who practically lawn darts Candice LeRae right into the cage, which would obviously be part of a feud that would last for many, many, many years and would eventually lead to them teaming up to become PWG World Tag Team Champions many years down the road.
They would end up dating down the road as well. They would end up dating down the road as well. I mean, they're no longer together, as Candice just got engaged. But they would end up dating around the time that they were the world's cutest couple when PWG Tag Team Champions.
Yeah. But it was like, so it's easy to mess all of this up just because of how many people get involved and how insane this turns into. Like I said, we weren't kidding. So far you have a tables, ladders, and chairs cage match that has 11 interferences, and then the ending happens. Who threw the rag?
Try that again, you cut out.
Huh?
Try that again, you cut out.
Who threw the rag?
I don't remember where the rag came from. I don't remember anybody specifically throwing it in the ring.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Is it possible that might have been one of B-Boy's bandanas?
It very well could have been, because that was the problem I was running into. I have no clue I have no clue how Joey actually got the damn rag. So, in this entire mess, Joey Ryan somehow comes across a bottle and a rag. What's in the bottle, well, okay, in the grand scheme of things, it's water, but we don't know what it actually was, and Sean and I couldn't agree on what it actually was. One says ether, one says chloroform. Truth be told to me, is there really a damn bit of difference between the two of them? Not really, but...
They accomplish the same thing in the context of a wrestling match.
Exactly. And in the end, Joey Ryan ends up smothering B-Boy with, insert item here, soaked cloth. And in one of the rarest occurrences in wrestling history, it's a knockout spot featuring the 3 arm drops. And gosh darn it, the arm actually drops for a third time. And in the end, 34 minutes, 11 interferences, 600 weapons later, Joey Ryan ends up retaining the damn championship in the end, ending what was, I believe, an almost year-long build for B-Boy to try and actually get a clean shot at the championship.
Well, I do believe that B-Boy was about to move out to the East Coast at this point as well, which is kind of what led to the decision to let Ryan retain here. But you'll notice something that you talked about earlier with Joey Ryan lawn darting Candice LeRae into the cage. That would be the catalyst for the Joey Ryan Human Tornado feud. So that particular feud would end up leading to Joey Ryan finally dropping the title to the Human Tornado, and then it would take us all the way to the part that we talked about earlier in the show where it got a little bit uncomfortable between Human Tornado and Chris Hero. The thing about B-Boy is I've never been real huge on B-Boy, and honestly, around this time frame, I was just getting into Pro Wrestling Guerilla. I started watching independent wrestling back in like 2007, 2008, so I wasn't familiar with the product at this point, but when I started watching Pro Wrestling Guerilla, Joey Ryan was one of the guys from PWG that stood out to me, whereas B-Boy was always one of the guys that was just kind of there. You back, Patrick?
Yep.
Okay. I was just saying, did you hear what I said about the lawn dart thing with Candice and Human Tornado?
No.
All right, well, real quick, I'll reiterate it for you since they heard my stance on B-Boy and Joey here. Ryan retains, but at the same time, his lawn darted Candice into the cage kind of sets up his next heavyweight title feud with Human Tornado.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, it's this whole match, despite all the clusterness about it, still does fit into the grand scheme of things with PWG. Like we said, it ends, you know, Ryan's feud with B-Boy. Sure, it was, you know, a goofy as hell way to kind of end it, but it ended it nonetheless. And, you know, like you said, it ends up starting or kind of plants the seeds for the next feud, which would be, as you said, Joey Ryan versus Human Tornado. And, you know, we're not even kidding, because Joey Ryan, or I don't think Candice goes into the cage head first, but Joey really chucks her into that cage. You know, I think she just went like full body right into it, but she chucked her in pretty damn hard.
No, I don't disagree.
So, you know, because anytime I think of lawn dart, I think of like the Kevin Nash Rey Mysterio spot. You know, and to me, lawn darting would be, you know, face first. So maybe I used the wrong word there. But I mean, you know, and to their credit, at least, they used everything they said they were going to use. You know, they used tables, they used ladders, they used chairs. You know, Joey Ryan, I believe, I think it was both of them would end up a complete bloody mess. You know, so this felt like the blow-off of a major feud. Cokiness aside, you know, because I get that, you know, you have to get the new heel group over, but for Christ's sake, 11 interferences? Was it really needed?
Well, you know.
Well, PWG, I guess.
It's Pro Wrestling Guerilla, and honestly, it's really not all that surprising.
Yeah, fair enough. Hell, they still pull that today.
Yeah.
You know,
True
the
stuff.
lights going out in the American Legion Hall. So, you know, at least they're consistent on what they do 10 years later.
Some things never change.
So, like I said, at least they're consistent. So, any final things that you want to mention about this?
Hold on. I'm confirming my thought process that Joey Ryan dropped the title to Human Tornado.
To who?
To Tornado, and I am correct.
Yeah.
It would have been, this show would have been July of 2006. Human Tornado would win the Pro Wrestling Guerilla heavyweight title in January of 2007.
So Joey ends up holding it for another
6 months?
7 months? 6 months, yeah.
Yeah, Ryan's reign started on December 3rd, 2005, and would last all the way to January 13th, 2007, just a shade over 2 full years.
December to January?
Excuse me. Just a shade over a full year. My mistake.
Yeah. I was about to say.
You did the same thing last show, so don't give me no grief.
Fair enough. And I believe that would be the longest single world title reign until Adam Cole's reign, which was, I believe, over a year and a half. That was north of 500 days. Joey Ryan lasting north of 400. Like
12-1,
somewhere around there.
12-1-12 to 5/23/14. Adam Cole's reign was 538 days. It is the longest in Pro Wrestling Guerilla history.
Oh.
Joey Ryan's reign is actually the third longest in Pro Wrestling Guerilla history because Chris Hero's reign was 425 days, whereas Ryan was 406.
Ah, okay.
And actually, Ryan's in fourth now because Roderick Strong, who is the current PWG champion, is up to 424 days already, and that's an active streak.
Boy, it has been that long. Wow. I forgot. Roddy won that in January of no, he won it December 2015 or 2014?
December 2014. He's held it just over a full year.
Wow. Anywho, so, yeah, you know, at least, you know, they book their champions strong, PWG does. You know, that's, at least we can give them that credit. There's a lot of things that PWG does do correctly. So, you know, they try their best to book their champions as well as possible, you know, long-term feuds. You know, I think a lot of things that wrestling fans, you know, suppose, blah, 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 real, quote-unquote, wrestling fans like, you know, with snow builds and things like that. They do seem good at it, you know, and even with this show here, like we said, it started Human Tornado and Joey Ryan, which 6 months later, would lead to Joey Ryan losing the PWG World Championship to Human Tornado, and that essentially started right here with him tossing Candice LeRae into the cage. So, you know, sure, the company can be kind of a, spot monkey company, and things like that, but there's definitely still things that I think they get correctly. I guess we're kind of turning this into a discussion a little bit, before we get to our best and our worst of the show. I mean, at least we can go that far, all the things that, quote-unquote real wrestling fans, argue about. At least PWG does do things like that correctly in their eyes.
Well, here's what I'll say in regards to specifically Pro Wrestling Guerilla, as well as, to an extent, our two local super indies in regards to, in your case, AAW, and in my case, AIW. Generally speaking, the super indies follow that same format, though. It's the homegrown talent earlier in the shows, and then the big-name indie guys coming in and working the end of the shows, and some of them working with the homegrown talents in order to help establish those homegrown guys. You're going to see a lot of very spot-heavy matches, but I think that's because those are the kind of matches that sell DVDs, and that's the kind of stuff that these promotions need, because you want to get that word of mouth to sell these DVDs, as well as to get that word of mouth of, hey, did you see such and such show? It kicked ass. We should go to the next one. And in your case for AAW, All-American Wrestling based out of Berwyn, or now Chicago proper. My case for Absolute Intense Wrestling, AIW, based out of Cleveland. And in the case of Pro Wrestling Guerilla, now based out of Reseda, it's a case of getting that word of mouth and getting to those people to get them to buy your DVDs and to buy your tickets and to support your product in order to be able to bring in these names and to continue running these kind of shows that they're used to running.
Exactly. It's all about word of mouth. Like, I get February 19th, since you want to bring it up, February 19th is the next AAW show, and I get Eddie Kingston versus Sammy Callahan for the Heavyweight Championship, So it's always a word-of-mouth thing and popularity, because as good as, the old Eagles Club was, they were still limited. And pretty much every single time now that AAW has run at 115 Bourbon Street, which is not in Chicago proper, I do have to correct you there. It's in Marionette Park, just outside of Chicago. They already draw a bigger crowd than they ever drew in Berwyn, at the small Eagles Club, which is essentially a bingo hall. Why does that sound familiar? But eventually, word of mouth and everything is going to allow companies to continue to grow. So, I almost wonder, why hasn't PWG moved yet? What kind of a deal do they have with the American Legion that they haven't moved out of there yet, considering the fact that they're essentially at capacity to where the fire marshal has to stop them from putting more people into the place?
No, with growth comes expansion, but the thing about Pro Wrestling Guerilla is they have to be getting some kind of sweetheart deal from the Legion Hall out in Reseda in order to not move, because you could clearly sell more tickets to a PWG show.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know, because it seems like every other company that can grow is growing, and I can understand why would you want to move to a bigger place and potentially not sell out when you can go to a place that you're consistently selling out, but you can't grow that way. I don't know.
One way to find out what's going to happen going forward with Pro Wrestling Guerilla, and that is to see if they're going to decide to actually expand their horizons there, or if they're going to just let things kind of be.
It's something that you have to wonder as they head towards the start of their now, well, as they're approaching the start of their now 14th year in business. So, like you said, they're doing something right.
Yeah, here's the thing in regards to that. For as much as we may knock them in as far as not wanting to expand the building and not wanting to go to a bigger place here, as you just said, they are getting ready to start their 14th year in operation, and how many independent companies can say that they've been in business for 14 years? Yes, PWG has significantly cut back on the amount of shows they run throughout the course of a year, but when you have the label of a super indie, that kind of tends to happen. AAW runs, 15, 16 shows a year. AIW runs 12 to 14 shows a year. Pro Wrestling Guerilla usually runs anywhere from 6 to 8, but they also run that triple shot with the Battle of Los Angeles, which expands their show total as well.
And they usually run a double shot with DVP4 and sometimes a double shot with All-Star Weekend. So, yeah. So it's something that I think it's strictly a wait and see kind of thing. Will PWG? I almost said AAW. Will PWG ever try to broaden their horizons? Who knows? We're both Midwest boys. We don't live on the West Coast. We don't know what they're thinking. That's for Super Dragon and the Young Bucks and all of those involved to try and figure out. So, but we still have stuff we have to figure out for today's episode. Are you ready to move on?
It's time for the big finish.
As always. So, best and worst, cash and trash. Harry, what's your... I was trying to say, do we start good or do we start bad? I think it's more fun when we start off bad. So, Harry, what's your worst match on this show?
Oh, we're going to do worst match first. Okay. A Ronin and Nemesis, and it's not that it necessarily was a bad match. It's just that it was kind of there, and the rest of the card stood out to me in one way or another. Patrick, what is your worst match?
The opener, Excalibur and Disco Machine. It's just, while it was great that the crowd was into it, it's just, I like the crowd being into it and a decent match. To me, this was not a decent match. I just found it to be really sloppy to the point that the sloppiness of this match more than offset the lack of crowd response in the second match. So for me, I have had to unfortunately give this one worst match honors. Wow, nope, through that one. What's your best match, Harry?
The six-man tag. And I put it just above the Kings of Wrestling versus Cape Fear match because of the backstory in regards to the six-man tag that had it allowed to, excuse me, the backstory with the six-man tag and the fact that it had been building up to this point where it finally broke down into a super intense brawl for the vast majority of the match and the incredibly hot finish, plus what it started going forward, too, in regards to the establishment of the dynasty as a legitimate threat. It would be just after this, I believe, that Bosch and Loss would win the tag team titles, too. So they were definitely treating the dynasty as a big deal in order to help keep Joey Ryan's reign as PWG Heavyweight Champion strong. How about you, Patrick? What's your best match?
If nothing else, just to be different because of the fact that I actually put them at the same score. One was the match you just mentioned. The other one was the other match you just mentioned. So I'm going to go with Cape Fear and Kings of Wrestling. And this was, in 3 out of 4 cases, a telling of the future of, what you would get now, almost 10 years later, when you see when you see what Chris Jericho has been able to do, Claudio Castagnoli has been able to do, and what El Generico was able to tell his young student that we now know as Sami Zayn in NXT. You could see...
No. I have no idea what you're talking about. Generico's in Mexico helping the orphans.
I said student.
You think Generico trained him?
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's what's obvious.
Interesting theory. Okay,
yeah,
carry on.
You didn't know that? Anyway, I think everybody knows that one. For this match to be booked almost on the fly, or at least at the last moment, with the lack of Briscoes, all 4 of them just, completely kept up with each other, and they kept, a fast-paced, hard-hitting, in, unfortunately, Claudio's case, bloody match, that just kept my attention the entire way through, and for me was, the best match, considering, the match before and the match after both ended in overkill for me. So, but, that's purely, subjective thing. My idea. Leave me alone. So, for us now, we have to wonder what's stuck in the broom closet of this show. What's your trash for the show?
The formatting, and specifically the fact that they went with these four matches back to back to end the show, like we talked about earlier. I don't have an issue with any of the four matches that ended the show, but I think you run the risk of burnout by not giving the fans a break, and I think you'd have been better served switching out the Roderick and TJ match with the Top Gun and Cabana match. That way you had that bit of levity in between the six-man tag, the insanity that was the tag team match, and then the main event cluster fudge. Patrick, how about you? What's your trash for this particular show?
Some we also mentioned earlier, the constant knocking of the Briscoes. It's like eventually got to be, okay, I get it. You're pissed at them because they didn't make the show. I get it. But, first Dino started talking about it, and then I think you got to mention during Excalibur and Disco Machine. It got a couple more mentions during the show. Then it gets mentioned again during Cape Fear versus the Kings of Wrestling. The Briscoes were too drunk to get on the plane, or they'd rather work their hangover, or they'd rather, work off their hangover at home rather than coming here and doing it. It's like, okay, I get it. They didn't come to your show. You're pissed at them. We understand that. You don't have to beat the fans over the head with it. It makes them look immature. It makes them look childish with their constant mentioning of it. You could mention it once or twice. You could mention it during Cape Fear and KOW, but it didn't need to be mentioned the entire damn night. But enough negativity. Let's move to the positive parts. What's the cash for you?
Sorry, I had to mute my phone for a few seconds so I could sneeze. My cash is the booking. And I'm referring more to the long-term booking than the direct booking here. Because they managed to set up everything going forward while still keeping the matches interesting. Yeah, the main event was a cluster, and we know it was. But at the same time, you continued the feud between the Dynasty and Team PWG. You set up Joey Ryan's next challenger for the heavyweight title with Human Tornado, and you eventually got Candice LeRae started on her road to being an active participant in PWG storylines. However questionable that participation may become over the course of the next couple of months, we'll talk more about that once we get around to it. In addition, you set up the Kings as a threat for the tag team titles in Pro Wrestling Guerilla, while establishing that Cape Fear is still a really good team to be dealt with. You gave Disco Machine and Excalibur something to work with on commentary by having their match as well. You set up Roderick Strong as a viable threat going forward in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla with his general domination of T.J. Perkins. And just as importantly, as I said, you got the whole situation with the Dynasty and Team PWG there. That would end up breaking off into multiple different angles there. You set up Battle of Los Angeles going forward as well, because you had all of these people that were established as people to look as potential winners for Bola. And it was the first year really in a while that Bola was up in question. Like in 2005, it was pretty well known that it was going to be won by who it was won by. In 2006, pretty much everybody had Davey Richards as the winner. Or excuse me, not 2006. Davey would come out of the 2006 Battle of Los Angeles as the winner, I believe. But you're setting you are setting the signs of doubt that any one of a number of people could come out of the Battle of Los Angeles as the winner. Why am I blanking with the 2005 winner of Bola?
I don't know.
Was it Bosch?
05?
Yeah, I think it was. I think Bosch beat AJ Styles in the final.
I don't know off the top of my head, unfortunately.
Can we get our producer in on that? Mr. Producer, can you look that up for us?
Is Mr. Producer alive?
I don't know.
I don't think so. Anywho.
We've lost our producer.
You were correct, Harry. It was Chris Bosh defeating AJ Styles in 2005.
Well, there you go.
AJ Styles beat Daniel Bryan, or American Dragon, and the Chris Bosh beat Quicksilver.
Interesting.
How about you, Patrick? What's your cash for this particular show?
My cash is the number of improvements that we've noticed since the last time we covered a super old PWG show. Which, for those that don't know, weren't listening to us when we had our original run, that was the original Hard Subject to Change from January 2005. So a year and a half prior to the show that we're reviewing today, Threemendous, which was my birthday, July 16th, 2006, my 15th birthday.
How many times is he going to plug his birthday, Sean? Jesus.
Yeah, you would have thought, people are really going to do something about the fact that it's his birthday.
Yeah, in 5 freaking months. Anyways, go ahead, Patrick.
Did I mention it was my birthday?
Now he's just healing it up on his own show.
Damn right. It's my show. I can do what I want. Anyway.
I hope we have a show on July 16th because I'm going to no-sell the out of your birthday.
But the vast improvements that have been, even if you look at just the roster improvements, whereas the previous show was like Super Dragon still holding the championship at the time, facing Homicide, and there's one other. Oh, and Tony Stradlin facing like Colt Cabana, and you look at the roster that you had with Threemendous. You had Davey Richards, Joey Ryan, B-Boy, Cabana, Hero, Castagnoli, Generico. You had a decent amount of these guys on, Card Subject to Change a year and a half prior, but it just seemed like even the commentary sounded better. Yes, it still sounded like it was in a broom closet, which more than likely it was, but it still sounded better, than it did a year and a half prior. It seemed like the camera work was better. It was a hell of a lot less shaky to me. It's just a lot of technical and roster changes that would occur over, that amount of time that would still continue even to this day, with now PWG essentially becoming the indie super show, as you mentioned earlier. But just very, very slowly improving until you get to where it is today, and it'll be interesting to see how it continues improving, into the future, 14 years in, 16 years in, 20 years in, if it gets that far. I believe that leaves us with one last thing.
We're actually going to remember to do the rating before you go into the take us home.
Bite me. Yes, we are. Barry, what's your rating?
7. And the reason I gave it a 7 is because most of the matches are good. Do not get me wrong. It is a 7-match card. See what I did there? But most of the matches are good. However, there are a couple matches that drag this down. The overbooking in the main event is a pain in the goddamn ass. It's late in the show. I'm allowed 1. Or 2, I guess, technically. Anyway, the overbooking in the main event is just awful. You could have told the same story with a little bit of interference. You didn't need to have everybody and their grandmother running in for the finish. Ronan and Nemesis was just there and really wasn't a match befitting of an anniversary show. And I understand that the card got all screwed up because of the whole no-showing Briscoes. And did you know the Briscoes didn't show up, Patrick?
No, I didn't know.
Well,
I wish they had mentioned that at some point.
Apparently it's also some guy's birthday the day of the show. But anyways.
They got drunk for my birthday.
No, the Briscoes don't need a reason to get drunk. Anyway. Disco and Excalibur was good. Top Gun, Tawar, and Cabana was a solid comedy match. It wasn't necessarily a good match, but it was a good comedy match. And then back to relatively back, I talked about the overbooking. The in-ring action for the main event is solid. The overbooking drags it down a level, but the in-ring action is solid. The six-man tag and the tag team match between the Kings of Wrestling and Cape Fear are both matches that need to be seen as a professional wrestling fan because they're both really interesting, they're both really entertaining, and I would argue that this particular Cape Fear match is probably some of Claudio and Hero's best work as a team on the independent scene. I give the show a 7. Patrick, where does your rating fall for Pro Wrestling Guerrilla's Threemendous?
Looking back at my old ratings, and I have Shine 1 currently at the best rated with a 6. So yeah, I'm actually going to have to agree with you on a 7 for that because pretty much for almost the exact same reason. Yeah, there's things that bring this down. For me, the overkill, the finish for Perkins and Strong, the complete clusterness of legitimately almost half of the roster getting involved in the main event because I counted. There were 20 wrestlers in matches, and if you count Jake Chung and Candice LeRae being involved as well, you had 22 wrestlers on this roster, and if you include B-Boy and Ryan, you had, I believe, 11 people, not counting the referees, involved in the match. So you had legitimately half of the wrestling roster involved in one match. So it got to be too much. And, I had my piece on Excalibur and Disco Machine, and, Ronin and Nemesis wasn't really anything to write home about. That being said, I do still like that the show just got better and better and better the later and later you got into it. And yes, booking 4, high-quality matches, consecutively would burn almost anybody out. But it seemed like the crowd was still able to stay in it, and as long as the roster, as long as the matches were able to keep delivering, the crowd was willing to continue accepting it, and accept that they did, including the main event, which, like we said, was a complete overbooked cluster of a match. But this was by no means a bad show. This was actually a very good show. Far better than the first card Subject to Change, and I would say even, still better than card Subject to Change 3, which I believe Paul and I, from W2M, Paul, and I covered as well. So, it was almost, the good far outweighs the bad for me in this case. So I'm willing to go and give it that little extra bump up to a 7.
I don't know about you, Patrick, but I think I'm about done here.
Yeah, and in your case, you're done for a while.
I won't be back until February 28th.
That is true, and Shore and I, though, will be back on Valentine's Day. And when you think Valentine's Day in wrestling, there's really only one show you can think of. That's obviously Survivor Series 1987. Okay, maybe not. Wrong holiday.
Just for that, Sean, you guys should have to do a WCW show, and I mean like a WCW 2000 show.
Okay.
I don't know what he's talking about either. So be sure to tune in back. We're finally back to normal as far as our time slot goes. This Sunday night, February 14th, Valentine's Day, when Sean and I will be covering WWF's St. Valentine's Day Massacre, February 14th, 1999, from the, what's the name of the arena? From the Pyramid in Memphis, Tennessee, featuring the main event of Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Vince McMahon, with Stone Cold Steve Austin's WrestleMania title shot on the line. And the reason Harry won't be back until the 28th is because then on the 21st, we all get to get together and chat, except for Harry, because he'll be at the show. Sure. When WGM... What?
Actually, I may or may not be attending. The person that I usually watch the pay-per-views with is attending, and therefore I can't go over to his place. I'm going to watch with a different friend of mine, but that friend works until 10:30.
Oh, okay.
I can just give you my pass to the network, and you can watch it on your phone or something, or your computer. I mean, it's not that big a deal.
My computer's not fast enough, plus it's a very small screen. It's a netbook, so the screen's only like 10 inches, plus my internet connection isn't the fastest.
Okay, well, fair enough.
All right. So, all right, for unbeknownst reasons, Harry won't be joining us when everybody gets together to talk about WWE Fastlane, the final major stop on the road to WrestleMania 32. That'll be in 2 weeks. So until then, Sean, don't you have some plugs to get in for yourself?
Well, don't listen to the most current episode of W2M because we had recording problems that have obviously been fixed with this show and the Super Bowl post-game show that we did. So if you want to hear it, it's been a while, but if you want to hear us talk about the Super Bowl and all that, you can go listen to that on the most current football podcast. We will be back to normal, hopefully, on the the upcoming WTM episode 182 on Thursday night, Friday morning. So you can look forward to that, at least.
Okay. And Harry?
I really got nothing because I'm probably taking the next night off. I might be taking the next night off for the reaction as well, just to, for those of you who don't know, the actual reason that I'm missing St. Valentine's Day Massacre is because it's my birthday. Patrick.
Well, and it's also Valentine's Day, which, I'm sure you're spending with your lady, so...
So what's going to happen is I'm going to be stepping away. I may call in and give my thoughts on the show real quick if I'm able to. I don't know how that's going to work out. But if I'm not able to do so, I wish you guys well with the show. I will be posting my ratings for the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And if I can find it, which I don't know if I'll be able to or not, I'm going to try to find Patrick and my take on St. Valentine's Day Massacre as well.
That is true. This is a redux for me, so it'll be interesting. And as always, if you want to talk to us more, you can find the show on Twitter at the now 300 follower famous at WU Off the Shelf, or find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Wrestling Unwrapped, where eventually I'll actually give my match-by-match ratings, not only of Threemendous, but also of ECW Guilty as Charged. Because, yes, occasionally I get behind on these things. Sorry.
My Guilty Stars ratings are already up if you want to check those out.
That is true. Harry's are already up. So if you want to check those out, go right ahead. So until Sunday, for Harry and for Sean, I'm Patrick Hetza. You have been listening to the very special edition, one-time only edition of Daytime Wrestling Unwrapped here on the W2M Network. You can find the W2M Network at Facebook.com/W2M Network, or you can find Wrestling to the Max, Facebook.com/Wrestling to the Max. And this episode has been presented in partnership with 411mania.com and LastWordOnSports.com. We'll see you Sunday, guys.
Later, everyone.
Brian. And thank you, Brian.